Hi, this is Levi Lupton. I'm just doing a little short um, series on the identity crisis, addressing the identity crisis. Um, I know in my own experience, my own walk through life, the biggest question that we always ask is, "Who are we?" And the second is, "What's our purpose?" You know, and I think even in the church, that's still you got people that are sitting out in the crowd, looking up at the pastor, and they're wondering, "Hey, who am I and what's my purpose?" Um, for years as a new believer, I kind of wondered what the will of God was. It's like, hey, what should I do? What kind of job should I take? What kind of friends should I have? What kind of car should I have? Is this car the will of God for me? Is this job the will of God for me? Is this relationship the will of God for me? Can I be a welder? Can I be a warehouse worker? And like my whole mindset was I have to figure out what God wants me to do. And I think that we are so kind of anxious in these areas of our lives, and it's kind of imprisoning us from being who we truly are, which is the simplistic version of ourselves. It's like your desires, your wants, the ways you communicate, the way you you partake of life, the way your perspective, those are all parts of your identity. It's parts of who God created you to be and how He created you to function in this world. And it's just a big crisis. So I'm gonna start making these little videos, this kind of little snippet videos to kind of just give people a opportunity to combat that mindset where we're always trying to figure out who we are instead of becoming who we are or being comfortable with who we already are and being able to walk in the perfect blueprint of who God created us to be, because God never makes something that's not perfect, because He is perfect, He is holy, He only creates perfection. So there's no part of you that is not perfect. You know what I mean? There's just parts of you that are being brought to the surface that are perfect. You know what I mean? So what an identity crisis does is it generates and puts layers between your mind and the reality. Um, it puts layers to block that identity. So it's like there's layers of these false mindsets of who you think you are that are covering up who you really are. And once you realize who you really are, the different facets of your very being that God created you to function in, what happens is those layers of things that have covered that up, the layers of lies that you've believed about yourselves, the layers of other people's personas you've brought on because you thought that they looked cool, or you thought that maybe you would like to be like them. So there's all these different layers of lies and other people's personas and idols, people we've idolized that we've brought on their character onto ourselves, that must be peeled away like an onion so that the identity that Jesus bought and paid for comes to the surface. The identity that God created us to be, the person who God created us to be. So the number one answer to the identity crisis that we all must get a perspective on is that we are sons and daughters of God, that we have been invited into a relationship through the cross of Jesus, and that changes the way we prioritize our time. We make time for our newfound father. There's no child that has been in the adoption process or who has been in orphanages or anything like that, that when they find out who their father is, when they get reunited with their father, does not come and prioritize, number one, the time to spend with them so that they can build a relationship with them, and number two, the constant seeking of information about their new father. In a worldly sense, if we were a orphan, this would look like finding out our dad is a welder, finding out our dad drives a Chevy truck, finding out our dad likes to fish, likes to hunt, likes to skateboard, or whatever it may be, likes to surf, you know, And that's what we have been invited to. So through Jesus, through the cross, the veil has been torn. And on the other side of that veil, we are face to face with our Father. Jesus came to earth and was a direct representation. He said that if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So what happened is Jesus came and he revealed himself as the characteristics of the Father. He says, I am the expressed image of the Father, which means through me, what I put off is the persona, is the character, is the energy, the life force of the Father. So if you've seen me, you've seen him. So through reading the word and through union and communion with Jesus, we are constantly being or confronting the image of our Father. You know, it's like it says in there. It says like beholding in the mirror the image that we were created to look like. You know, it says that when we see Jesus, we will be like him. You know, so there's no adopted child that does not, when he finds out that he was adopted and finds out who his real father is, does not seek out the time, you know, like in a worldly sense, like the coffee time where you meet your father at Starbucks and you sit down and you have coffee with him. Nobody, no orphan, once he finds out who his father is, does not dedicate time to that, you know. So the next thing is how do we position ourselves in the light of that information? Like, how do we begin to act? What do we do that brings, or what do we bring into the relationship that begins to make that relationship flourish? And number one is honor. So the first thing we do is we begin to honor our Father. You know, I got my buddy Eddie. He's mentored me. Hold on a second. Can you give me a second, honey? Okay, thank you. So I have a mentor and friend, and his name is Eddie. And I was talking about this with my wife the other day. So Eddie's been like a spiritual father to me. He has been in charge of my heart, and he directs my heart. He also reveals my heart, and he's also a friend. You know what I mean? And there's just all these facets of that relationship. But even though we are friends, even though we have a relationship that we are friends, when it comes to a conversation where I am looking for an answer that I do not have, he becomes an authority figure. And whenever he says something or whenever he corrects me, because of the honor I have for him, I step back from the role of friends to the role of a child who is looking at a father figure so that I can be imparted what that father figure has for me. So the first way we position ourselves in the roles of sons and daughters is by sitting at the feet of our Father in honor and looking at his commands, looking at the way he says to live, looking at the character traits that he says to put on, and positioning ourselves to become those things in which he has spoken and said is the correction of your life. Like basically he's saying, here's a book. These are things that please me. These are things that reveal who you are. And these are the ways that a son and daughter walk or live. These are the character traits. These are the way they deal with business. These are the way they deal with relationships. These are the way they deal with marriages. And we come into that like an adopted child. And we're reading these things, and we would get revealed two things: the nature that we're supposed to be putting on, as well as who our Father is. Through his commands, through his character traits, we begin to realize who our Father truly is. And that brings me to number two. So what do we do once we find out that we're children of God? What do? We prioritize the relationship. We prioritize the time. We prioritize knowing who he is. Who is my new Father? What does he what is he like? You know, what does he like to do? What's his business, so to speak? What's his will? You know? And the very last thing we start implementing is changing our character to be like our Father, because Jesus, or it's written that as the Son sees the Father do, he does likewise. So if you have a son, you know that if you were to be a rodeo star, you would come home and your kid would be dressed in cowboy wear and probably have a little tiny fake horse, and he would be riding around on this fake horse, through the house. So it's natural. God has created us for the Son to want to look like the Father. So the last thing after honoring the nature and character of who Jesus is, we begin to take on that character. We begin to work through the layers of things that are covering that identity as a son. And we begin to strip that stuff out so that all that remains is the character of our Father. So I hope that really just kind of gives you some information. We just have to realize the very first foundation of finding out and being comfortable with who we are is the identity that Jesus purchased on the cross for us to walk in. The identity that once that veil was torn in two, that we were face to face with the Father who brought us home, our Father who created us, and learning to live, prioritize, and just enjoy the fruit of that revelation. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.